Hello, everybody. I'm going to start off by just saying really quick that I want to give everybody a few minutes to get settled. And so I'm going to be sort of checking the my chat boxes and make sure that everybody is where they should be before I go ahead and get started for real. So if you have questions and you're already joining us, you can feel free to go ahead and start putting them in the chat box on the side or in the thread. Either one works, and that way we can get started here in just a few minutes. So I'm just going to give everybody about a minute or so, and then I'm going to go ahead and get started, even if we don't have anybody, and so it'll all be good. So I'm just going to be sort of sitting here checking things out. So go ahead and pop some questions in there if you have them. Otherwise, we'll get started here in just a minute. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. Okay, I think, let's see here. I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully everything sounds okay, and we're in good shape, and thankfully we can do a lot of editing. Eric says, well, edit it in post. He's a film guy, so sometimes we do that. We edit it in post. So it's funny how we can make things look good that really looked bad before. Okay, so I'm Melisa Nielsen of Waldorf Essentials, and I decided to do this planning today for grade 8 for, I really had good intentions to have our grade 8 guide done and our grade 10 guide done. It just wasn't going to happen. Our summer was too busy, and it was very good busy. And so it's okay. It is what it is. But I just, I thought instead I would go ahead and sort of do a planning video. So if you're listening live and you have questions, feel free to leave them in the question section. You're welcome to ask questions. If you're watching this on the replay, then please go ahead, and if you have questions, just send me an email. So you can easily get me, Melisa at waldorfessentials.com. Or waldorfessentials@gmail.com. Both of those work. And so I'm happy to answer questions that you have, even if you're not one of our clients. Like I said, I really had intended to have grade 8 ready to go, and it's just not. And so, I just release. It's all good. It doesn't do me any good to stress about it. So I thought I would get started with just some thoughts, and then I'm going to go into some resources for grade 8 and some things you want to have in mind. And again, please stop me, ask me questions if you have them, and even if you have them later on in the download. So I'm going to read a little bit from this book, and then I'm going to tell you which books I really like for planning with the upper grades, and actually for all the grades, and which ones not so much. So this is the task and content of the Steiner Waldorf curriculum. I'm just going to tell you, this is not my favorite book. It's a good book, and I think some people really like it. I think the choleric in me just doesn't like this book. I prefer this book. This is it's by Carl Stockmeyer. It's Rudolf Steiner's curriculum for the Waldorf schools. It's an older book. But the reason why I like it is because he lists every single place the Steiner said something, what his exact indications were. He gives a little snippet of how it was utilized in the first school, and he sort of goes through, and it was, and I know I'm kind of weird, but I really like going and finding the exact place that he said it. And so I really like it's broken out so that it'll tell you exactly where each piece is. And some of the pieces are really hard to find, and some of them are in old faculty meeting notes. And so those I really like, because those are questions from the first teachers, and then he's come back and said, well, this is what I think, and this is how you should do that. And I'm definitely not, I am a pretty big Waldorf purist, I will say that. And but I try not to be weird about it, but I will like sort of lay it out and say, this is what he said. And because I've been down this road for a long time, I can see the wisdom like over and over and over again in the work that he's put forward. And over and over again, I've watched as the things that he has recommended absolutely unfold beautifully for the children. And so I have 5 children, ranging from ages 5. She just turned 5 in April. And this is August 2016, in case you're watching this in like 5 years. So she just turned 5 in April, and my oldest is going to be 20 in January. So I have taught grade 8 3 times, and loved it all the times. The struggles that I had in grade 8 were more with the children than they were with the curriculum. So my boys flew through grade 8. We had a great time. My daughter, 13-year-old girls are hard. Maybe not all 13-year-old girls. My 13-year-old girl is hard. And she'll even say, I didn't like myself then. And she didn't. She didn't like herself then. She's a sanguine melancholy. She definitely had, the sanguine was really strong in her at that time. And I think she's probably generally split right down the center, but she was really struggling. And I was struggling. That's the year I had my stroke. And so I think in the whole big picture, the year that we did grade 8, that was kind of a weird year. So I want to start by, I sort of told you why I like each one. Do I think you need either one of these? Especially for the upper grades. Yeah, I do. I really, even though you're using our curriculum for the lower grades or whoever's curriculum you're using, I think in general, if you're going to follow this path, I do think you need to be able to look at exactly what Steiner said. And I think it's super important. I find his words, sometimes you'll find nuggets when you're reading that maybe I didn't bring it forward. Maybe the people who wrote the other curriculum didn't bring it forward. And maybe it was just something you really needed to read. And if you skip reading those parts, then you're going to miss something that often your children need. So I definitely think that one of these resources should probably sit on your shelf. There's another resource that I like, but it's very, very abridged. It's very small. It's a very good, kind of Cliff's Notes version. This would be a good thing to have on hand, maybe for grandma, maybe if you want to grab something really quick for your husband to read. This is, it's just called The Curriculum of the Rudolph Steiner School by Roy Wilkinson. It's a teeny book. In fact, on the back, and I know I've had this for a long time, but it says $6.95 from Rudolph Steiner College Bookstore. It's not very expensive, but it does. You can see mine's got post-it tabs, just so that I can get to things quickly. And I like the way he sort of talks about some things. I find this to be a very nice and pretty succinct overview of most of the topics that they cover in the schools. So, and because I like him. I like Roy Wilkinson. I like, he has a lot of other books that I use sometimes as background for the lower grades. I like reading what some of the older anthroposophists said when they were writing things and when they were teaching. I find that to be very, very comforting, very grounding for me, very, very nice as it informs me as I'm working with the curriculum. And that, it doesn't mean that it changes, because I follow the curriculum that we wrote. I follow the Waldorf Essentials curriculum. I might tweak something here and there to meet my child, and that's exactly what I expect you to do. I don't expect you to follow it to the letter and have it not be working right for your child. I expect you to be able to step back and say, okay, I need to tweak this over here, or my child is not going to be 10 until the end, closer to the end of 4th grade, March timeframe. I'm going to move these North Smiths over here, and we're going to focus on some other things over here. So I do think that you should absolutely do that, even if you're using our curriculum, because the best way to do it is to really, work with your child and sort of work with what their specific needs are. And that's why we homeschool. We have this opportunity at home that we don't have in a classroom, where we have, sometimes in the classroom they could have an 18-month age span, and that's kind of mind blowing to me, but they could. And it happens a lot more, I think, today in the classroom, because they are pushing, especially in this economy, they're pushing kids forward faster than they should and faster than often they're developmentally ready. And at home, we really have this golden opportunity. So I'm teaching grade 4 this fall for the 4th time, and I love grade 4. Samuel is my oldest 4th grader. He was my oldest 1st grader. He's, out of all my kids, he's been the oldest. He turned 10 in June. And so he'll be starting 4th grade. Now in, often in regular school, or even in some Steiner schools, they would have pushed him through and he'd be like in 5th grade, but he's totally not in that space. He's totally not ready for that. So every single time, and I have a lot of new moms argue with me, but every single time I follow Steiner's indications on age and placement, every time they work right. So if you're looking at grade 8 and you've only got a 12-year-old, back at mom. Or, if you're looking at grade 8 and you've got a 15-year-old, then we need to go forward. You should be looking at grade 9, even if we have some remedial things to do. So if you're sort of in that spot, definitely drop me a note and let me know, and I'm happy to help you with that. So I'm going to read this quote that I really liked. So even though I'm not a huge fan of this book, when I say that, it's nothing against the authors. It's nothing against the writing. I don't love the way it's organized. And again, I think that's just the choleric in me. I read it and I was like, I think a sanguine put this book together. So, and that's okay. That's okay. I have part of me is sanguine, but that was not resonating with me at all. So I like this quote. It says this is the summary for class 7 and 8. And so a lot of things go together for classes 7 and 8. The overriding theme is working with the world's laws by conversing with them and, in doing so, finding one's own voice. Students should experience how knowledge makes one capable of forming appropriate judgments and how forming judgments leads to new questions. I really like that. There is this time with the 8th grader, you can see the wheels turning. And, Steiner believed that the intellect was born when they're 14, and you're on that edge. You're sort of on that edge of going to that place. And I really found that I really liked 8th grade. Even though 8th grade was a struggle for me with my daughter, and she was the last one that I taught 8th grade to, I found that I really liked it. And there's a lot of fun stuff in 8th grade. And so you shouldn't be afraid of it. I think if you're just planning this out, and the first thing you have to do is look at how far you got in 7th grade, because there is so much information as you go forward that you might often feel like you're not getting enough in and you're not able to sort of get enough done. And so I want you to feel like you can back up if you need to. You can sort of step back and just sort of look at the bigger picture and look at sort of where you've been and not feel stressed out about it. I want to show you a couple of resources. If you're coming to Waldorf late and you have not covered, some of the ancient history, and you're thinking, how in the heck am I going to catch all this up? Gosh, I got to do the Age of Explorers. I got to do all of that. You really don't want to stress out too much, because you are going to sort of go back through with more depth in high school, especially from grade 10 on. But I do think it's very good for personal reading to sort of make sure they get that in. So I really like this resource. This is called The Story of Mankind. And it's by Hendrik Wilhelm van Loon. And it's actually free. You can find it free usually on Nook or on, what's the other one? Kindle. And I find it's a great resource. We've used it even without catching stuff up, because my kids really like stories. Most kids really like stories. And so they love sort of learning history through stories. And so I have pulled from this. It's the table of contents is very well laid out and very well written. So you can always pull different pieces from it for certain years if you like the material in here versus maybe something else that you've put together, or even some of the Waldorf authors. So I have a hard copy on my shelf but we're talking about moving again to a smaller house. So it's very possible this is going to end up in somebody else's house and we're going to have a digital copy again. But either way, I find this to be an incredibly good resource for bringing history in a story content way. And I would utilize this. Gosh, I think what I had Harry do his 12th grade year, he was pretty much done with just about everything. And he was really he really wanted to have a job. He was working on studying for the GED and making sure that he was in a good place for that. And so we did definitely well, I shouldn't say some, most Waldorf 12th grade work. But I also, he had great interest because we were going through sort of the deeper historical concepts. He had great interest in reading this book again. So he read this book again in 12th grade along with his other reading, and he really sort of devoured it because he loved the story aspect, and it dovetailed nicely into some of the political and human aspects that we were talking about and spiritual aspects that we were talking about with regards to each spot in history. So I find that to be a really good resource. Let's see, I'm going to show you some resources here before I talk a lot about lesson blocks. I think that a lot of moms start to get really nervous about English and making sure their kids are in a good place with English concepts, and making sure that your kids are ready for the next step, ready for high school, ready for college. And I find it really interesting. I'm pretty laid back, and it's suited us. And there's some things that I'm like, no, we need to do this. But there are a lot of things that I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to live the art of allowing. And when you allow, sometimes it's so amazing. Well, often it's so amazing, but I don't stress about those things. I figure it really also depends on what your child wants to do and what direction they want to go in. But I find a lot of moms that were okay with sort of the nice pace up until about 6th grade, and then they start to freak out a little bit. Don't freak out. Do not freak out. It's not worth it. And it's absolutely not necessary, I don't think. So I did not use any extra not Waldorf stuff until about the 7th and 8th grade. I introduced this book. It is a mainstream English book that I actually was recommended by a Waldorf teacher. I pulled this resource because I knew my kids could work through it on their own. And so this is called English Composition and Grammar. It's an old textbook, the first course. So I'm not so sure I would say you have to get this one, but what I liked about what I liked about it and what my daughter liked about it is that it's just sort of broken up into lessons that most of us remember when we were in public school as kids, and they could easily go through and do a lesson a day. And that worked out really well. She, especially my daughter, I was thinking since she was the last one that I taught, she really enjoyed, she did all kinds of crazy stuff with some of the prompts. She wrote some weird stuff sometimes, and I would go, huh? But she wrote it, and it came from her heart, and it helped build her, it helped to build her writing skills, and she really enjoyed it for that. So I really think that by the end of 8th grade, if they work through something like this, they probably don't need much else after that. We didn't use anything for 9th grade, nothing. And we did have, and I'll talk more about this in a minute, but we did have access to an online school for 8th grade for Eleanor. And so one of the things was their English course, and she took it a little bit. She said, Mom, this is so boring. I would so much rather do this or write on my own or have Dad help me. My husband's a journalist, and so he's got that background. Have Dad help me with this. And so she really didn't like the conventional Common Core stuff that was available in sort of this online school that we had a little bit of access to. So listen to your kids. If they don't like different resources, find out why they don't like it. When she sat down and explained it to me, and she even showed me, she said, these concepts are really dumbed down, where in the book I could just do it and put it together, and it flowed really nicely. So I do think that there is this, there's sort of this movement of, and I think it is with the Common Core stuff, where they're really trying to push things ahead to make them easier. And I think in making them easier, they make them harder. And so I think that where we have some crossover in the older grades with Waldorf and maybe some mainstream schooling, it wouldn't necessarily be mainstream schooling today. It might be more mainstream schooling when we were in school, sort of before this Common Core business. I have a son that's going to be a senior this year in public school in Utah. He lives with my ex-husband. And he said, Mom, he said, I get all the stuff, because when he transitioned over, he was in 10th grade, and he had to take a couple of weeks of a tutor just to get him up to speed on Common Core. But it was no big deal. It was not oh no, he's deficient in this. Waldorf math actually did everything he needed it to do. But he said, Mom, this Common Core stuff is garbage. So even the kids think it's garbage. And I thought it was very interesting, him coming from a Waldorf homeschooling background, that he could sort of pick it out and pick out that it was flat and it didn't feel right. And so I think that if you're working with a child that's come home after being in public school, you want to sort of keep some of those things in mind. You really want to keep things as alive as possible. So I'm thinking I'm going to talk about a couple of things here. I've made some notes, so that's why I'm looking down. I made some notes over here because I have a lot of things in my head, but not all of the 8th grade curriculum in my head. I think that one of the things to remember, if they were in a Waldorf school, they would still be with that same teacher they had since year one, at least in theory. So they're still painting with that teacher, but they're, actually like moving on to a lot more in-depth painting. And here at home, one of the things that I noticed about all 3 of my big kids so far was there was this impulse, 7th and 8th grade, that they really wanted to do a lot more art on their own. And so I was able to figure out, we did some online courses, some work with friends that were artists, and some self-taught stuff, where I really wanted to let them sort of expand and explore. And what it has done for both, especially for Harry, my oldest, and Ellie, my number 3, is they've really loved it. Now, Jacob, he was never really liking art anyways. He's my middle son. He did art and he did all the painting and all the modeling and all of the drawing when we were schooling together, but that was never his favorite. He is very melancholy, very hard on himself, very much. If he cannot do it on his own, then he doesn't want to do it. Now he did do handwork, and he'll still do handwork. I just saw him last week. He's like, Mom, what are you knitting? So, he would always do handwork, sometimes not super willingly, but I noticed for him, he was much more driven by what can I fix? And I do think that is a thread with, I think that's a thread with some melancholy, because they want to be able to fix things. And that really made him feel good to be able to fix that. And so what's funny is he's, in the public school setting, and he's a mechanic, and he took some mechanical engineering classes in school, and now he's fixing his cars and friends' cars, and he's working on cars on the weekend. And so really artistically, he comes alive that way. So try not to, at home judge where your child is with regards to that. I know what they would be doing in the school setting, but we're not in a school setting. So we're at home, and they have a lot more choices. They have a lot more opportunities. And so allow that to sort of flourish, but also at the same time, don't stop learning yourself. Don't go, oh, well, I'm okay, I can stop. I don't have to keep practicing. One of the things that I've loved as a Waldorf homeschooling parent is that it has really made me be on my toes, made me sort of go deeper into the arts, and made me better. And they have always exceeded me. All the kids have always exceeded me. And I'm like, wow, but I have to keep working because I still have 2 behind them, and keep going. That doesn't mean I'm going to be this fantastic potter ever or sculptor, but it is really good for me. It's really good for me when I'm doing that. So keep those things alive in their lessons, and don't forget those things. Don't forget to make sure that you're planning lessons that have opportunities for artistic expression. And I would make sure that you have that on a weekly basis, because you really want to have, you really want 1 or 2 pieces every week that are absolutely available, that they can put together. So I try to really think about that with our lessons. So I thought I would share really quick. One of the things that, so like say for handwork in 8th grade, in a school setting, that's when they would really start using the sewing machine. And of course, a lot of us at home have been using the sewing machine for a while. And so we really want to not skip why they don't start until 8th grade. That doesn't mean you shouldn't start until 8th grade, but you don't want to sort of skip what they do. So in the school setting, often they will do a sewing machine block and sort of learning about the sewing machine. So we did that. We, even though she's been sewing since she was 9, we did a block on understanding the sewing machine. So you get a little bit of physics in there, a little bit of history in there. And she did this painting / drawing, I guess it's a drawing, a rendering of the sewing machine. And she used our sewing machine. And, I thought she did a really good job. She went through and she researched how it actually works. She looked at brand new sewing machines, old sewing machines. She got very interested when we went to sort of, oh my goodness. We went to a couple of museums that had some older pieces. And so she was very interested in that. It really sort of lit her up. She was understanding more and more sort of, where the sewing machine comes from and sort of how it works. So then she's not yelling at it as much when it doesn't do what she wants it to do. And I find that like incredibly funny. But she kind of have to know Eleanor too. So, I find that when you're sort of looking at what to do with handwork, we did like I said, this block on the sewing machine. Then I had her make some things that were not just for herself, that were for other people. In the schools, I find this awesome, but at the same time, don't be intimidated by it, because we absolutely have not done it. And like I said, I've taught it 3 times. In the schools, they recommend making a clay oven and baking bread. And that really sort of dovetails into the chemistry work and sort of what they do for chemistry. So chemistry can be this like really frightening, frustrating. How in the heck am I going to do this at home? Really what you want to look at for chemistry in 8th grade is sort of natural processes. So grain to flour, what gluten is, how it works, fermenting, raw versus pasteurized, cellulose and proteins. So things like that are really what you're focusing on for chemistry, real world chemistry, how it's actually working. That's how they're going to understand things. And that's really how you're going to be able to help them then as they move on from that to, the different parts of chemistry that are a little more heady and that you will probably need to hire some help for. We also did biographies of some chemists. There is a great little book. Let's see if I have it here. Is it not here? It's not here. I thought I had it in my stack. It's a biographies book, and it's great for 8th graders. And it's a Waldorf biographies book, and I will put it in the notes for this and put a link together for you. So history-wise, you're sort of looking at revolutions, and you're going from where you were at the end of 7th grade. So if you didn't finish up everything for 7th grade, don't skip. Don't skip. Do some quicker review maybe at the beginning of the year. And then you want to do some, some revolutions. We focused on early American history, the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. And we used some documentaries for that. And we also used some movies for that. She really liked The Patriot, but I think it's the eye candy that she had. My boys liked other things, and I think it's totally okay to show them some of these movies. Now, I'm really careful. Movies that have strong rated R content at this age, I'm still really looking at that. So we may only watch portions of some movies, and sort of letting them see. I like the way cinematically some filmmakers put things together, and so that's why we utilize film sort of on a regular basis from about, I'd say from about grade 6 up. If there's a really good film about something that is, that's part of the content, I usually will grab the DVD, make sure I've watched it myself, and then, pick apart the pieces that they can use. Let's see here. I was thinking about our work. We hadn't finished, I was talking about sort of catching up anything that you missed. We did not finish astronomy in 7th grade like we had hoped. So we definitely went on, and that was the first part of 8th grade. We went on and did some astronomy there. We worked with the Charles Kovacs book, which is for 6th and 7th grade, that has its geology and astronomy. So we worked with that and went through his lessons. We also sort of looked at some of our own spiritual practices and what we think about the stars. So I think if you are somebody who spiritually looks to the stars, and you didn't cover that as much as you wanted to in say 5th and 6th grade with say the Greek constellations, then absolutely pull that in. It doesn't have to be this huge, heavy focus though. So pull in what is necessary and make sure you have fun with it. We also did, and I'm just reading off from her, from the things that we did specifically with Ellie. So she also, when we did American history, early American history, we worked with this. I found this to be a good book. This is a book we discovered a long time ago when Harry was doing 8th grade. It's called To Be a Slave, and it's by Julius Lester. And here, hopefully you can see it. It's a great book. It's like a diary of a slave, and so I thought it was really good when we did the Civil War. It was good. And then we also covered the Civil Rights Movement just a little bit, not a ton. I wanted them to see sort of how that whole thing started and what sort of how it stands today. So we did a teeny bit on Rosa Parks, and I found this one good. This is Ruth Ashby, Rosa Parks, Courageous Citizen. So I find this is a Sterling Biographies book, and they have these at Barnes & Noble. I like to go and sit at Barnes & Noble all by myself and look at all of their biographies and look at all of their different books and see which ones will work for us in our homeschooling, because there are some good books there. There's awesome, amazing Waldorf books, but then there's awesome, amazing books that aren't Waldorf as well. And so when I can get something and don't have to reinvent the wheel, I often do. There's also, I really like Charles Kovacs. So this is his Age of Revolution book that I find we used it a lot in grade 8, but we also used it a lot in grade 9. We did not do all of the revolutions in grade 8. We sort of did some of them in grade 9, and it worked really well for what we did because of how we covered history. I think you really have to listen to your child and see what you can cover. You can, because this book in particular has 54 chapters. So what I generally do with my planning is I go through and I look at all the chapters, and I look at sort of what we've got going on for each piece, so that we can really sort of make sure that we get the meat of it. So don't stress so much about how you're going to get everything through. One of the things that I thought I would really focus on when I was doing grade 8 was, this is where I want to be by the end of grade 9. And because really with grade 10, history starts to transform a lot. And so I made sure that I laid it out enough so that we could do what we needed, and we could get the depth in that we wanted, and that we could have the breaks we wanted. I school 3 days a week, and it really works for us. It really works for us. We generally get all of the things in that we want, and we have a lot of breaks. We usually do about 10 to 12 days on, and then we generally take a day off, and we have fun with that. And that really works for us in our family. I didn't do that when I had a lot of younger kids. And I don't know why, because I think it would have really helped us not be stressed out so much all the time. And so if you're sort of, you've got younger kids and you're trying to figure out how to get it all in, really think about it, because I really liked doing it that way. I really enjoyed it. This will be the 3rd year that we're doing 3 days a week. And so what do we do? People say, well, what do you do on those other days? So Monday I teach. Tuesday we have our homeschool co-op. and I count that. I don't count it as a school day as far as my 3 days, but we have a co-op that has some academic content for the older kids. So I count that in our days with the state, even though I don't really, I count the days. Wednesday, they all go with dad and I work. And so Ellie will often go to the library and do some studying at the library, or maybe they'll go to the zoo, or they have their own routine on Wednesday. Thursday, I also work, but Eric is here at home teaching on Thursday. So he teaches on Thursdays. And that goes well sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't go well, but it's not usually him. It's usually kids that are like, Dad. But it goes pretty well. And Ellie is not super fond of him teaching math because he teaches a little different than I do, but it works. And then Friday I teach again. So we have a good mix in there, and we get everything done that needs to get done. And so if you're really looking for ways to try to figure out, gosh, I don't want to be burned out, that's really helpful. And if I wasn't working on Wednesdays, I think I would still do 3 days a week. We would just have more fun on Wednesdays and do other fun things. So I think that's pretty much it. I was trying to think. We used, let's see. We finished up our geometry blocks that we did not finish in 7th grade. We finished them up in 8th grade. We used Making Math Meaningful by Jamie York for 6th, 7th, and 8th for our math. And there's some geometry, further geometry in those. So we did that. And those are great. I find them great. If you're looking at his website and trying to decide what to buy the teacher's book, the teacher's spiral bound book, because it has the answers in the back of it. So you want that. And then also buy the big purple book that has the lessons in it, so that you have all the background for the lessons. So definitely buy both of those. I just have my kids, because we've had the same set of teacher bound, like the workbooks, since Harry started. So they just write their stuff. My kids have a notebook that they put all of their answers in. So that works out really well for us. I'm trying to think of what else. We did use Physics is Fun for 6th, 7th, and 8th by Roberto Trostley. And this is a gigantic book. And I happen to know he's just come out with a new book that sort of replaces this. And so just look up his name. I cannot for the life of me think of what it's called. Physics, ! Something like that. Just look up Roberto Trostley. And I bet you Pamela at Meadow Street Naturals has the new book. Or if you Google it, you'll be able to find it. But I liked him because when I first got this book, I thought, did I just waste money on this gigantic book that's all geared toward the classroom? And yes, it's geared toward the classroom, but there are enough things that you can do for each, because he gives several different ways to bring together each concept. There are enough ways that he brings across each concept that you're not going to have any problems finding something that you can do at home. We really had a good time with this, and he goes through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and there's plenty of things to do in here. And then if you've got a co-op with bigger kids, you could definitely use some of the physics things in that co-op as well. So gosh, I think that might be everything. I still use this handy book, and I know they've come out with a new one. This is the Waldorf Student Reading List. I like it. It actually goes 7th through 12th grade. So it's still usable, but they do have a new one, and that's by Pamela Johnson Fenner and Karen Rivers. So that's a good book too, to sort of pull some reading pieces for your kids. Now, when it comes to the nuts and bolts, you might say, okay, Melissa, you gave me all this information. Now what? What do I do? I will put this in the notes and make sure that it's linked maybe in the comments on YouTube. This is a form that we made a couple of years ago when we did a planning course, and it's the block plan. And so it has space for your child, the time frame that you want to get the block done in. And I generally try, it depends, as they get older, sometimes, when they're in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, even 6th grade, a lot of stuff gets a month. But things are moving a lot faster sometimes in the upper grades. So don't feel like you might be looking at going, oh my gosh, things are changing. They are changing. So be fluid with them and don't be sort of stressed out about it. But I put the time frame of, you know, that I want to get it done, the theme of the block, and then I make a list of the outside materials needed, the topics that I want to cover in depth, and then any field trips or project notes. So if I know that there's, you know, we live in San Diego, there's some great museums here, but when we lived in Utah, there were amazing museums too. So definitely look at where you're at, what museums that, you know, are available, and you might think that there aren't any, but look. And also this is a great time to contact your tourism department and say, you know, I'm homeschooling mom, are there any museums that focus on the French Revolution or whatever? And you might be surprised, maybe there's a little pocket of French people and they put together some museum and you didn't know anything about it. So definitely, you know, do your homework when it comes to that, because I find that field trips, anything that can be hands-on where they can actually see things, is to be super, super helpful. Super helpful, and it makes your job easier, and it gives you sort of a spot to maybe start with some of your planning. And I've always found that to be just a lot of fun. And it's I know planning can be really stressful for some people, and I know I'm kind of weird because I like planning. The sanguine in me likes planning. The choleric in me really likes executing the plans. So I kind of tend to have the best of both worlds there, and I know that some people really struggle with that. But if you can become friends with planning, then it will really help you. I wanted to show you just before we close here. I'm going to show you, I still do, for all of my kids, I still do this folded piece of paper with everybody on it, because with all of the blocks laid out on it, because this is really my quick cheat sheet. This is my Cliff's Notes version of what I've got going for the year. After I do this, I transfer it to Evernote, and I use Evernote for my planning. Evernote I found to be incredibly helpful, especially for the upper grades, because you can grab websites and clip them. You can make notes for each block and have it all in one place. So then when you transfer it to each daily lesson, it's not so hard. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. I think that one of the things that, I just want to encourage you that it's not as hard as you think it will be. And I do think that you can get through everything that you want to get through. And I think you can have fun doing it. And if you've got really difficult children, that really doesn't have anything to do with the curriculum. Still plan things out. And then if you need a consult with me, if you're one of our lifetime Inner Circle members, please just make an appointment and get on my calendar, and we'll talk on the phone. If you're not, and you're somebody that would like a consult, then we've got that available in our store. And I'm super easy to work with. And I have a lot of experience with kids, from easy kids to hard kids and everybody in between. So let me help you if this is something you're really struggling with. So I think that's pretty much it. Thank you for joining me for this grade 8 planning session. And if you have any questions, please just sort of let me know. And again, it's melissa@waldorfessentials.com or waldorfessentials@gmail.com. And if you see me on Facebook, you're welcome to sort of grab me on Messenger. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. I hope you have a wonderful day. If you have grade 10, grade 10 is going to be up next. So join us. Bye now.